So, seeing as how the Nightmare trailer is going to be released on September 17th, which is only 13 days from when I'm writing the script, I'm a little bit late for this project and for this topic in general, but I would still love to chip in my opinions and thoughts on the second currency that will be coming, and I hope I can still influence the update in some way. And the reason this video is so late is I only came up with this idea just now after watching Tickly Risen's and Chris DeBro's videos, who have some really dope ideas about how to obtain the Nightmare Towers and the introduction to TDX. Nightmare is going to bring in some super cool and long-awaited towers like the Behemoth, the War Machine, and my personal favorite, the Refractor, along with a shield tower and an unknown engineer or surveyor tower with a drone. After all, I can't wait to drive Dr. Xenon in my Behemoth tank. Anyhow, with these new towers and the new Nightmare game mode will come of course a new currency. With such a hype update being on the horizon, this could truly be a make or break moment for the game, like how TDS's hardcore update was. I wanted to offer a solution so that when players do invest in this new currency, it won't fall off harder than Bitcoin, the Oscar Awards, or TDS's War Machine and Mecha Base. Yes, the hardcore update is still not finished after almost 5 years, and it's crazy to think this after I was watching Noel's video about it.
So old, and it is so incredibly boring compared to the rest of the game that it actually feels like I'm playing something from half a decade ago. Oh wait, I am playing something from half a decade ago.
Plenty of other YouTubers have already made amazing videos on this topic or the obtainment method of Nightmare Towers, so please do check them out. Tickly Risen, as well as Rogue Ordinary, Noel, Chris DeBro, and Remy will all be in the description below, as well as Mert W. But with that, let's move on to the problems of a second currency. So what are the problems with the second currency? Well, I first really wanted to talk about Tickly Risen's video, as I really loved how it offered a fresh and unique solution to the acquisition of the new Nightmare Towers. I would absolutely love doing a unique quest that is themed around each tower, like he outlined in his video, and I think it would make these towers feel a lot more unique to get instead of grinding with the same old gold strat while making progression feel smooth and less skippable. Now, moving into the issues of a second currency. The main problem with the second currency is that it's too short-term focused. As soon as a few weeks have passed, everyone will have grinded the new currency until it becomes a gold 2. And this of course is a problem that extends from strategy documents, which can make grinding feel repetitive and boring. This was the exact issue with TDS's gem currency, as Ryzen and Noel pointed out. It quickly became a coin 2 which people stockpiled on for ages until my beloved engineer came out. I knew someone who literally had 50,000 gems, and no cap by the way, before Engineer was released. That is like actual no lifing right there. And grinding such a repetitive game mode like hardcore can quickly accelerate the player burnout process by a large margin, and it leads to limited time events being the only thing that satisfies players and not even evergreen content. This is the stage that I feel like TDX is in right now, so hopefully we can find some way to get out of it. But the events game mode has definitely alleviated a lot of this tedium like the Tower Battles Nightmare or the Winter event coming back. Those really hype. Gems serve the same functionality as gold does in TDS, so there was no real merit to having it besides making the grind harder and locking the new special towers behind content like the hardcore update. This ultimately is just like busy work, and they might as well have costed gold at that point. And as Noel pointed out, or NOL, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, having a second currency is only a drag, and it drastically reduces the gold reward amount for late game players they would have gotten to ease up the grind. However, a second currency is kind of already confirmed by John and the other TDX developers, so today I'm hoping that we can solve this issue and the root causes of it, which will ultimately lead us having to talk about player retention, as motivation is intrinsically linked to currency. I absolutely love the TDS hardcore update though, so don't get me wrong, and even though the gems were a little bit strange as a currency, I think the hardcore update in general was my second favorite update ever since the first overhaul update. And so we get into the main crux, so to speak, of tower defense games. And as I was like ruminating about tower defense games in general, I was thinking how it always seemed like they were plagued or cursed by the issue of replayability, and their gameplay loop or design by nature can accelerate game burnout and struggle to keep player retention. So how in the world do you get someone to be committed to this genre of game as repetitive as my attempts at asking out Dr. Xenon? How do we give a 30-year-old pro gamer interest in TDX? After looking at TDS, or Tower Defense Simulator, this is where we will take a look at how other games handle their currency and how even real life handles currency. We will look at games like Tower Battles, Tower Blitz, Battle Cats, Soul Knight, Minecraft, and surprisingly, League of Legends, and yes, even real life animals. I'll elaborate on this more later, so don't you worry, my fella. And then after all that, we will move on to my solution for the TDX Nightmare currency. Tower Battles gave out special candy currency during its Halloween event rerun, which gave players a reason to grind for a bit, but ultimately it still ended up the same as gems. It wasn't as bad for Tower Battles though, as it was a limited time currency, whereas gems were a permanent addition to TDS, which is why it felt so bad for a long time. Seriously, I cannot believe it used to give 100 gems for each triumph, and each game was like 45, like 50 minutes long. Yeah, it was crazy, but thankfully it's like 300 now with other ways of getting them outside of hardcore. And then there's Tower Blitz, which succeeds both TDS and Tower Battles by introducing their own second currency called challenge points. Tokens was kind of their version of TDX Gold, earned from the basic core game modes, but the challenge points came from a set of rotating daily challenges. These challenge points were then used for buying skins from a daily rotation or skin crates. And this gave players a reason to visit the game every day and to see what skins were on rotation while taking on new hard daily challenges. Tower Blitz was really ahead of its time and had a very intuitive take on that second currency. Now, I've never played Grow Garden before, but I am aware it does employ the same tactic from Tower Blitz super well. And of course it does that by having global events that makes players join in to get the yummy rewards. Yippee! Of course, I wouldn't want TDX to be too cash grabby, as it will detract from the main audience it's already built, but there are definitely a few things we can learn from Grow Garden. It pulls players in by giving them limited time events like the dinosaur event, the bee event, or the Zen event, or just normal like general events. And in a similar manner to tire battles, it has a limited second currency for each event, but there are still ways of earning them or trading for their respective event products even after the event ends. And this basically encourages players to join the events for fear of missing out, and profits, of course, from hoarding event items. And ironically, as crazy as this sounds, this builds an insane sense of community to the point where there are whole internet cafes in the Philippines dedicated to grow a garden. Crazy. And the new second currency for each event is used for special pets and plants that don't add anything like new to the main gameplay mechanics necessarily, but if players do decide to get involved, they can get cool, powerful pets and plants that can help them make more money, I guess. And so TDX 2 can facilitate this healthier form of FOMO, or a healthier form of FOMO, which I will address later in my solution. So how do other games off of the Roblox platform handle a second currency? Battle Cats is one of my all-time favorite games where you send eldritch forces, dragons, anime waifus, or waifus as my art professor would call it, and of course normal cats to take over the world. While most mobile game energy systems are pretty bad, I feel like Battle Cats has a very generous and workable energy system which allows players to refill energy if they have these things called leaderships or flags. It may sound kind of diabolical that you can't play as much as you want, but this system is also single-handedly the reason why so many players have stayed interested in the game, because you can't just zoom through it like you could with like the Blitzkrieg strategy from TDX. And this energy currency ultimately stops players from burning out too quickly and keeps them interested in the game. TDX could adopt this method as well to keep players engaged and playing the game at a healthy rate. And although many identify Battle Cats as a tower defense game, I would also consider it a resource management game. And their form of currency, of course, is XP, which you can use to upgrade your anime waifus, but there's also cat food, which can let you roll on, that's right, gacha banners, because yes, all roads lead to gambling, money, wealth, fame, and power. If you want my cash cow, you're going to have to gamble for it. Even after players get a unit they want from the banner, it can still be worth it to pull for the same unit again as you get access to another special currency called NP, used to unlock special strong abilities on cats, and it can be gained from exchanging the duplicate unit you got. The new TDX Nightmares should work similarly to this and give players an incentive to keep playing Nightmare mode even after they already have the new towers, and this will be connected to my solution later on, so stay tuned. And you know, if I had a penny for every time Battle Cats was mentioned on TDX's videos, I would have 2, which is strange, but that's still like 2 more than 0, you know? So that just goes to show how good of a mobile game Battle Cats is. But anyhow, that takes us to another beloved mobile game of mine, Soul Knight. Soul Knight is a dungeon roguelike where you go through multiple floors and rooms as a character and beat up all the baddies. They also have some very interesting character portraits these days as the fan base grew up. In Soul Knight, you also have gems which are used to buy characters and upgrade them. You can play a mode called Origin Mode, which is kind of the Nightmare equivalent of Soul Knight. There, you get access to these blueprint fragments or general fragments, which if you collect enough, you can make a jewelry charm that gives your character strong buffs. However, these jewelry charms are not permanent and you are required to get more general blueprint fragments to repair them from time to time. this mechanic, which is kind of reminiscent of durability, now brings us to everyone's beloved Minecraft. In Minecraft, every armor set, tool, or gear you use has some sort of durability. The basic gear, like leather or copper, which is newly added to Minecraft by the way, have a pretty noticeably low mining speed and significantly lower durability too, meaning you can't just use those same tools forever unless you're playing in the earliest versions of Minecraft when durability did not exist. Or if you have mending, but shh, that enchantment is like 1,000,000,000% too OP. Players are definitely encouraged to upgrade their tier of tools when durability gets low by going back to the mines and mining them yummy diamonds. And even when you do have the highest tier of armor, you still need to repair them with more ore when they run low on durability, using things like anvils or combining them in your inventory. Or you can even use those yummy diamonds for cosmetic armor trims. And this is pretty different from tower defense games, as once you have the highest tier of tower, say the Refractor or the Accelerator, you never really have to go back to the grind. And this sparks the endless grind cycle, which Remy points out in his endless grind video, where each new content update just introduces more and more expensive towers to keep players grinding until the game can't sustain itself anymore and just folds over like a soggy waffle. Never eat soggy waffles! This is an observation that MerkW also made in his video. It is never meaningful attainment, and it is just something to keep players busy, which is why I feel like Ryzen's quest idea, which we mentioned earlier, would be great. By looking at Minecraft, we can learn that TDX's second currency needs a reason for players to regress and to unironically yearn for the mines. And now, we'll move on to our final game.
Let them come. This land will be their graveyard.
This is rebellion.
League of Legends is a mobile game where your jungler calls you racist slurs until you eventually cry behind your door and wondered why you installed this atrocious game. No, I'm just kidding. What League actually is a fun game, so don't listen to the haters. It's a MOBA where you control different characters called champions to destroy turrets until you eventually reach the enemy nexus. Blue essence is the main currency used to buy champions, while orange essence is used as a second currency to buy skins you get from Hextech chests for free, instead of buying them with real USD, because wow, who doesn't love gambling? And yeah, it seems like everything always goes back to gambling in anime, huh?
Gambling and enemy.
Even when you have bought every single champion, orange essence still serves as a way to keep players interested in the game and rewards them with cool skins for playing, which is something TDX can take away from. But there is someone, or perhaps something else, that TDX could learn even more from. And you might know who it is. Ducks! Yes, that's right, ducks! Just like animals who have to come back to the same lake to get resources, this is how the TDX second currency should operate. You might be wondering, what the heck can we actually learn from these fat, strange creatures, but there's so much more to them than what they may look. Like us, ducks need food and water, but they can't stockpile on it forever like we could with TDX's gold. I know as players what we want is to always be full ducks and to ultimately never move an inch from our screens if we don't have to, but like the ducks, we must take flight and go onwards to find the yummy bread and the delicious water. What TDX needs for its second currency is like these ducks, a sense of impermanence or instinct when it comes to resources like Battle Cats or Minecraft. It should be something that satiates players' thirst for fun during the grind, like how the lake is for the duck. I actually got this idea from watching the same ducks eating food and water near my lake every day. Now that you've seen all these cute ducks viciously sprint towards the cameraman, let's figure out what all these games share and how TDX can make a second currency based off of them. Let's go!
説明しろスグル
君にならできるだろうサトル
親もんなこと聞いたら意味ない殺しはしねえんじゃなかったのかなわけねえだろサトル俺も何が何だかわからんのだ
崇拝しているのは純粋な天元様だ
決まってんだろできもしねえことをせこせこやんの意味ねえっつんだよ
傲慢だ
あ
な前から言おうと思っていたんだが君にならできるだろう紫
If you've been listening to every aspect about all these games, and the ducks too, can't forget about them of course, then you'll quickly notice two trends about all of them. They all have intrinsic and extrinsic motivations for the players and are resource management games. Intrinsically, all the Nightmare Towers and the game modes are going to be cool without a doubt. You'll want to use their towers for their unique stats and abilities they bring, as well as how they look visually. This is the same for the beautiful maps we play, as we've seen from the links and from the Discord. However, what most tower defense games are missing is the extrinsic motivation they have, or the realistic purpose, you could say, of playing these new modes. In Minecraft, for example, you go exploring because you want to tour the new biomes for the heck of it, the intrinsic motivation. But you also still have a reason to go, like finding diamonds or other special loot that can only be found in that specific biome or structure. And mining diamonds is still valuable even if you already have a full set of diamond or netherite armor. And in that same vein, get it? Like Orvane? Oh, never mind. Battle Cats can still give you a reason to grind for cat food even if you have all the units you want from the gacha, because you can still boost them with duplicates to make them stronger stat-wise, or sell them for NP to unlock their strong special talent abilities like I mentioned before. In TDX, there really isn't any reason to play any of the harder maps, and with the introduction of a second currency, which would be presumably a lot harder to get gold, there'd be even less of an incentive or extrinsic motivation to play the harder maps. And it's quite unfortunate that 60% of the maps, which are often the most prettiest by the way, go unplayed because they are suboptimal for playing, even if they do give additional rewards. And in a strange way, some animals do not have intrinsic motivation either. They don't touch grass for the sake of touching grass and traversing the lands, but they do it out of necessity for food and for water. And this, along with all the other intrinsic motivations of the previously discussed games, is what TDX's second currency, or tower defense games in general, are missing, which is now where I'd like to propose my concept and my solution to TDX's second currency. And now, finally, I'm offering my solution or concept on this complex issue: rest, refract, and recharge based on my favorite pal, the Refractor. These are the 3 objectives I'd like to achieve while offering 2 different mechanics for handling the second currency. And those 2 different mechanics are the inventory and the podium. Rest represents giving players space away from the game in a healthy manner and not hardcore grinding for gold for 8 hours a day, then never touching TDX again. While Refract represents diversifying gameplay and introducing more variety. And Recharge represents the mechanic I'm about to talk about. It kind of sounds like a mental health slogan if you really think about it, or the reduce, reuse, recycle. Wait a minute!
3. Dirty D's done dirt cheap.
I hesitate to elaborate on this mechanic, as if you've been picking up on the patterns throughout this video, you'll already know where I'm heading with this, but please do hear me out. For my first mechanic, the inventory, I think it would be cool if the second currency wasn't just used to buy the tower, but it would also have to be used to get charges, quote unquote, of them and maintain them in your inventory like good old Bob the Builder. On a more serious note though, Refractor, for example, could cost 100k coins and 3 Calamity Crystals initially, after doing Ryzen's quest of course to unlock it. And I think 100k coins is pretty reasonable after doing a long quest and beating Nightmare Mode say 3 times. And after purchasing Refractor, however, you would need to spend 1 Calamity Crystal to get 2 charges for 2 games of using Refractor, but the first time used is free of course. These numbers are always interchangeable, and I could totally see them being a lot more forgiving. 5 or 6 charges does sound a lot more fair, and I think that's around the amount it should actually be. But I'm just using 2 as a visual placeholder and number for my images. And I got the feeling that a lot of players would be mad at me, and understandably so. I'm not even sure if I entirely wanted this myself at first, but regardless of how I felt, I eventually came to the conclusion that it would benefit TDX in the long run. Players are often beckoning players, or developers I mean, sorry about that, to listen to community feedback. But the truth is that most player feedback is only concerned about the short-term benefit of the game and not the long-term. This is why developers are always careful when listening to player feedback, which is why there's always so much contention amongst these 2 parties. What the players want is not exactly the same as what the developers want. And it's not a lack of transparency, but rather a lack of understanding, or in some cases, a higher dimension which most can perceive but are unable to understand or lift themselves up to. I think almost every YouTuber on TDX, if not all however, has content that is concerned about the long term of TDX, and this mostly just applies to the average player, I'd say. And so the reason why I think this charged second currency mechanic would work is that it gives Nightmare Mode some great replayability and give players that extrinsic reason to revisit Nightmare, unlike how many players abandoned Endless after getting the new towers. Players may not be happy at first when they realize they have to pay currency just to use the tower. It's like as if you had to pay money after buying a PS4 just to use it. And it sounds crazy, right? It doesn't sound like a great idea in the short term. But then I feel that players will quickly realize they get to play a fun brand new game mode and it will actually have a purpose instead of losing relevancy like Endless did after a few weeks. And they will have the intrinsic motivation of seeing the cool nightmare mode, playing the new beautiful maps, and listening to the banger music while earning rewards that let them continue to use these strong new powerful towers. In a way, it's like players are learning how to budget their time and resources. And not only that, but it would also tie in with the lore really well, showing these towers are powered by calamity energy we are collecting. These nightmare towers should feel unique and powerful to use, especially since they've been teased for so long. So having these charges, I feel really makes players carefully reconsider when and how to use them. There's a really strong power fantasy to these nightmare towers that I think should be maintained. And after all, these are the long-awaited nightmare towers, so their novelty and wonder should not be lost. What made TDX, or just any tower defense game, fun was the feeling of getting stronger and figuring out what towers to buy first with your money. It was that power fantasy. And I think what made TDX so unique and specific too was that you can buy multiple choices and you wouldn't necessarily be wrong for making them. For example, an early game player can buy barracks and beat up intermediate with the whole US army. Or they had the choice to buy John and axe the mods to death. I got the feeling that I was watching Remy's Endless Cycle video where he described his burnout of the game. He lost the joy of what it felt like to be a new player in the old TDX times, and understandably so. What actual reason is there for a player to keep playing if they're already the strongest they can be? And that's something I've been kind of wondering about recently. And Remy said in his video that,
for me, TDX has simply grown way too big and fast to the point where it become unrecognizable to the game I'd originally fallen in love with.
that's why I think this first mechanic of mine, the recharge one, can add back that element of resource management and the joy of what it felt like to be a new player again. Rather than buying the new towers and hopping off, they can continue to keep playing Nightmare mode and still feel rewarded for it. Using what we learned from Christobro's video, we can use his principles on this update too, but instead of it being for complete beginners, it is now for mid-game players or dedicated late-game players. So I really want you to imagine this with me. When players finally go through Ryzen's quest, they'll be much more equipped to not only use the tower as the quest is themed around the tower, but they will also be in a better shape mentally. As funny as that sounds, because they didn't have to grind the same expert map for 10 hours straight like a Redditor. And once they finally go through the hardship of beating TDX's new Nightmare mode and obtaining their first 2 Calamity Crystals, or 3, however much the Nightmare Towers will cost, they will finally get to buy that juicy accelerator. Oh, I mean the phaser. Oh wait, that's coming to TDX too? Oh, I mean the juicy refractor tower, of course. Then they can use this refractor tower to beat Nightmare mode with a lot of difficulty still, by the way, but still noticeably easier, which rewards them for getting refractor and gives them additional crystals to recharge and buy other Nightmare towers. They will really be able to feel how powerful refractor is and get that yummy dopamine hit. And eventually they'll strategize on how and when to use Nightmare towers so they can keep using them for joy while not running oomph on Calamity crystals. And it's really no different from a squirrel trying to figure out how to reach the nut with the least effort put in. If they determine the nut expends more energy than what they gain from eating the nut, they will totally just give up on it, which is why doom scrolling is more appealing than doing schoolwork or work. It's all a cost calculation. And so just imagine hopping in one day with your friends to pull up to the nightmare mode to recharge your cool heckin' war machine or the giant behemoth tank for the day, and then you see them marching down the path ready to beam the heck out of the cool bosses, and then kablooey! They blast the Emperor to Kingdom Come and Dr. Xenon is saved! Yippee! It sounds really cool to me at least. We saw after the Endless update, once players got the new towers and played a few matches of the new content, most did not come back on until the next major update, so this system for the second currency could keep them coming back for the ages. I don't want these towers to feel like the old gold juggernaut where you could bring them to every game mode and win. And this is why Tower Blitz's tier 5s and Bliss of Finality feel so special, I think. This system would also stop the worry of power creep and metal loadouts, as Refractor can't just be used every time without a second thought as to how many charges you were using. It would also add another dimension to loadout building. We always first considered the game mode we were playing, then the meta towers, and if we could bring them, the cost of the towers we bring, and if the game mode's economy can accommodate it, and the placement limit, both global and of individual towers, their stats, class, and abilities, and how many players are playing. Now we really have to consider resources as that extra dimension when it comes to loadout building too. And players of course will not lose a charge on a tower unless they win, so that players are not discouraged from recreational fun use or experimenting with different loadouts like how TDX would always want. And this will allow them the option to of course leave the game and lose the rewards, but still be able to use the tower if they're using it for more enjoyability, testing purposes, or content creation perhaps. And now, before I get into the second alternative mechanic of recharge, after just finishing my first one, which I call the podium, with the podium being my second mechanic and the inventory being the first one, I wanted to address a few other small, minor mechanics that are vital to making the system work. So the next issue is how do we stop Calamity from becoming a gold 2 like we discussed in the first part of our video. And I think the easiest solution to this is there should be a daily limit of how many Nightmare Triumphs, and not matches by the way, you can play per day, and a cap of 10 Calamity Crystals for your inventory. Players should not be able to play, or players should be able to play Nightmare unlimitedly for the gold, but only get the crystals a limited amount of times per day. Players can of course buy Calamity Crystals with gold, giving it another obtainment method, so we're actually going to take a page right out of Grow a Garden and have them be obtainable from a shady Forge Industries member who only shows up once a day in the lobby with limited client-sided stock. This would yet again incentivize players to hop back on TDX at specific times of the day and keep player retention high. However, there should probably be a limit to the conversion system, I imagine, so that players can't just mass convert their gold to crystals and then never play Nightmare. That would just totally defeat the purpose of the new charge system and adding new content. It's simply just a convenience feature, and it should not replace the actual gameplay or new content. I imagine it would still be locked behind a level 100 requirement before you can trade gold with him, or he might be unlocked after you buy your first Nightmare Tower. I still would love it if once you have one Nightmare Tower, chargers can refill daily so players won't be forced to play Nightmare if they don't want to. And this is also what the Forge Industry Converter is for as well, additional convenient crystals. And VIP members can get more charges for each Nightmare Tower upon each daily reset as well, and this would make VIP feel a lot more appealing for players to buy, and it'd be an additional way to support developers. And this could be made a separate Game Pass too. Perhaps it could be called Calamity Charge Voucher Game Pass or something crazy like that. And with this update being so heavily focused on late game players, I also wanted there to be an obtainment method available to newer players, so they should be able to get Calamity Fragments, which is what I'm calling it, which could then eventually be merged into one crystal, similar to Battle Cat's feature of merging seeds into cat fruit, which helps evolve your cats. They should get 1 fragment from tutorial mode, 2 fragments from easy and intermediate, and finally 2 more fragments from Endless Wave 80 to eventually merge all 5 fragments into one. This would probably be a one-time thing, so it wouldn't be tracked like how you could with the main currencies like gold or calamity crystals, and it will automatically be merged for you once you have the 5 fragments. But perhaps you might be able to go to Dr. Xenon to get it merged. And of course they still wouldn't be able to skip to a tower like the War Machine just yet, since they'd still have to go through Ryzen's quest and grind the gold. And they still would have to beat up Nightmare 2 more times to unlock a tower like Refractor, but it will give beginning players something to look forward to. And this would also act as a secondary hook for TDX's intro that Chris DeBro talks about, as you get your own shiny, special, beautiful fragment that no other players definitely have. Wow, Chad, PogChamp, Poggers. If you look at the fine print carefully, we never said you can buy a tower with just 1 crystal, but that you can use them to buy them. And being rewarded with the Calamity Fragment also makes sense from the lore, as there was a documented tutorial mode talking about Project Calamity. Any players hooked by the lore will be caught in wonder and will stay to find out. These crystals are also very similar to Battle Cat's Dark Cat's Eye, where early game players can get 1 or 2 Dark Cat's Eye, which lets them get a glimpse at unlocking the prestigious Awesome 4th Ultra form of cats and hooks them into the game. I have a friend who recently is very close to getting Cosmo Ultra form after painstakingly gathering 15 Dark Cat's Eye. Finally, to increase replayability and to allow players to grind more crystals upon a Nightmare Triumph, you will get a codex of sorts which can be decoded for gold. Once revealed, it will reveal the location of a Calamity Crystal and give you a quest of sorts. For example, a level 3 codex may ask you to be wave 80 of Endless or wave 40 of Expert. The amount of crystals and fragments awarded would be noticeably smaller than the main Nightmare game mode, but it would be a great way to add replayability to existing game modes and give players a reason to keep playing. I know I previously said the fragments are a one-time thing for beginners, but maybe it should continue to exist for all players. And this too can be added to the old event game modes like Tower Battles or Halloween 2024 to yet again give them more replayability and reward players for playing different game modes. The novelty of playing a variety of game modes is so much more engaging than grinding Expert for the 67,000th time, you know? And this will effectively achieve the Refract objective, which we mentioned earlier, and the cap on the Nightmare Triumph limit will stop players from unhealthily grinding out the game and speeding up the burnout process, which yet again achieves the rest objective. The codexes are still locked behind Triumphing Nightmare 2, which has a daily Triumph cap, I remind you, so players will still have to play Nightmare so that they don't unlock Nightmare Towers too early. VIP members or the new Game Pass can of course increase the Triumph limit per day. I do think the daily Nightmare Triumph limit can quickly become annoying, so players will be allowed to spend their gold to skip the wait time, which can effectively be the conversion method everyone really wants, while not being too OP and ruining the whole point of playing an update. It would be pretty similar to Battlecat's flags or leaderships that let players refill their energy to full if they want to play some more, and that's a choice that they have to make. This would give the players who grinded a lot of gold before the update still feel rewarded for their effort. And while many people may not be the biggest fan of the daily Nightmare Triumph limit, it keeps players in check so they don't hop on one time and never come back on, just like the Battlecat's energy system. And hey, like even I want to like stay on the game and grind for that many hours, you know? But this is where we have to think about what the developer wants versus what the player wants. And for the long-term benefit, this is a much better system. And this is how we can further achieve our rest objective too. And to further increase the replayability of Nightmare Mode, there should be a set of rotating maps daily, similar to Tire Blitz challenge maps, encouraging players to play on harder maps. VIP will not, and I repeat that, not be able to override the map, and they must wait till another day if they want a specific map. And this is to, of course, to counteract those strategy documents, those accursed strategy documents that John hates so much. And I know it probably, like, at some point there's probably gonna be like some dude, you know, like Vicious or like a UTV who makes a strategy doc for every map. But at that very least, if you're gonna be using strategy documents, at least there'll be a variety of them which can help keep you engaged in the game. But now I'd like to go back to my two main recharge mechanics, the inventory and the podium. And so if my first mechanic of charging individual towers through the inventory isn't appealing to you, then my second mechanic, the podium, might seem a little bit more plausible to you. It makes it so that every day you have to visit Dr. Zedon in her lab after she turns good and doesn't die. Right guys, right? That's like copium. Please don't die before TDX gets out of beta. And after failing to marry her for the 67th time, you can charge a Calamity Crystal in the podium, which will allow you to use any Nightmare Towers unlimitedly for just that whole day. On the next day, after a 24-hour period, you would have to recharge the fountain or podium with your Calamity Crystals and beat Nightmare Mode again at least once that day. VIP members would be able to possibly get a longer 36 or 48-hour period even, possibly. The reason why I'm not the biggest fan of the podium, our second recharge mechanic, is that it promotes unlimited usage of Nightmare Towers without a second thought. It removes that new dimension of loadout building, the resource management, which I was talking about earlier, and it destroys creativity if you can just bring it to every loadout. I'd much rather have the first inventory mechanic, but the podium isn't a bad alternative either if players feel the first mechanic is too harsh. And finally, I've recently been hearing a lot of players have had a hard time grinding XP, and let's be real, the XP grind has become a lot harder than gold these days, so I think it would be cool if Calamity Crystals could be exchanged for XP. I'm always a big fan of games that give players options, so they can either choose to exchange the crystals for XP to make the level grind easier, or they can choose to use it to recharge their Nightmare Towers and then grind Expert faster with them, which ultimately means faster XP rates. This achieves our Refract objective further and brings back the resource management feeling from the early game days for the late game players. And post game players who are like level 200 or something like that, who are looking to compete on the level leaderboards, may find this mechanic pretty appealing too. But other than this minor mechanic and the two main proposed recharge mechanics I was talking about before that, the inventory and the podium method, these are my solutions to the TDX second currency that I feel will best keep the player retention high while giving developers more support through the additional VIP benefits or the recharge voucher game pass. Having achieved all 3 of my R objectives and proposing my 2 main mechanics, along with a few other small ones, I'd like to finally end this crazy long video. And so, in summary, the main mechanics I would want are the 2 charging mechanics, either recharging individual towers with the Calamity Crystals through the inventory UI, or recharging a podium with Dr. Xenon, which gives unlimited access to Nightmare Towers for the whole day. Then, I would want codexes dropped from Nightmare to encourage players to play other game modes for crystals or fragments, because the daily quest can suck sometimes. And then a Nightmare Triumph limit, skippable with gold, which essentially acts as the much wanted conversion method. Then I'd want a Calamity Crystal cap, a Phony Forge Industries member who you can buy Calamity Crystals from or exchange them for XP, a way to merge fragments, a set of rotating daily Nightmare maps, and finally Calamity fragments for hooking in early game players. The ideas don't have to just stop there, and there's so much potential for these crystals or fragments to be used for skins, power-ups, and other cool updates. And so this is where you guys can come in. I'd totally love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments as to whether you agree or disagree with my ideas, or maybe have some new ones to chip in too. I put a lot of effort into this video, so I hope you guys really enjoy it, and I'm genuinely curious to see how these ideas may be received by you, the community. And I apologize if a lot of the information was a bit repetitive as I was in a rush to get this video out. Anyhow, I'm so excited for the Nightmare update. And a long time ago, I foresaw some of the issues with the hardcore gems from TDS, like many others did a long time ago, but I was too young at the time to make any impactful changes. Although I was the one to make the suggestion about adding bans to PvP a long time ago, and you can tell because of how old Frost Blaster looks and the whole UI. So I guess I have that going for me, even if the TDS PvP update still has a lot of area for improvement left. But anyhow, I hope now, as a 19-year-old college art student, things can be a bit different this time. I felt very burnt out from my art journey in general, but TDX has given me a special place to recuperate and have fun. If you want to check out some of my artwork, it's on my art channel and on my Instagram, by the way, where I love doing art. Shameless plug, I know, shameless plug. And I'll even give you guys a sneak peek of my Dr. Xenon splash art I've been working on before the Nightmare update, because I just can't contain my excitement. Ooh la la! I'm not sure what direction the developers will take with this new currency, if there will even be one at all, but I'm hopeful and confident they can make a banger update. They might have already done these ideas that I have mentioned, or they may have not. You know, what goes on behind the developer scene is not something that I or anyone else knows, except you, Rogue, but I have faith. I hope I'm not too late with this video for them to consider my idea. I'm super hyped for this update, and ever since I've seen the first TDX trailer with Refractor in it, I've been waiting to get my hands on them. I absolutely adore TDX, and I've had so much fun playing it over these years and playing all the events. Except the John Skippy one that I sadly missed. Please, John, bring it back. Please. I'm so thankful to John, Atraz, and every single one of the members on his developer and community team for making such an engaging and wonderful game with a fantasy that I absolutely love living out. I really hope that if any of you guys are watching this video or hearing these ideas, that you'd really consider it, as I don't want TDX to have the same fate as Tire Blitz or the TDS Hardcore update. Well, that's all I have for this video, so thank you to those of you who stuck around until the end, and I hope you enjoyed all of my ideas, and you can look forward to even more videos about my solution to fix XWM, the missing tanker, water towers, and fixing TDX's grinding gameplay loop with bravery mode, as well as some other cool variety content. Thank you, and until then, savor the cheese, consume the bread, and be one with the bamboo. Yippee! See you on the Nightmare update. Bye!